Hey, yo, Foxboro. Thank you for tuning into another episode with me, Sara Marshall. And I have a brand new guest on the show today. It is not Murph, who has been on 4 out of now, I think, 6 episodes. um, it is my co host of a wrestling podcast. And I say it's a wrestling podcast because it currently does not have a name. He is a Patriots writer for the Gillette Gazette, a WWE encyclopedia, a self-proclaimed WWE encyclopedia, who still questions my knowledge from time to time.
Well,
He
I have
is
to.
the champion of the peeps. He is Patty Pitts.
What's
Hello.
up, guys? Thank you for having me. I'm so
You know what?
excited to be
I
here.
was
I love
I
the
you know
introduction too. Thank you so
oh,
much for that.
I worked on it because you asked me specifically to work
Damn right. You
to
need to
get you a
introduce the
good one.
champion. If there's a, if,
Yes.
especially the double champ, you need to introduce me in a good way.
Yes.
It was a great way, so I'll give you that.
So I was thinking about this because one, we talked about it briefly, that this is kind of a role reversal
It
because
is. I like it.
when we do the podcast, I mean it's a collaborative thing, but you lead it. And
But
what
I'm the
I was
host of the
thinking
most. So
is we met on Twitter from like being Patriots fans, but have you noticed how often we speak, we almost never talk about the Patriots?
no, it's got to that point where we literally just talk wrestling and whatever's going on in our lives. Like Patriots has become secondary, which
Yeah.
is fine because it technically isn't in season yet. So I feel like we'll get to that point. But yeah, it's
Maybe.
been dominated by wrestling for good reason, for definitely good
Yeah.
reason.
I just
But
thought it was
now we
funny. I
have a
was
chance.
thinking about it and I was like, because I tried to think, how have I met these people, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, dude, we met. I don't even know how we met or how we started talking, but I know it had to do with the Patriots because that's basically how I meet everybody. But I was like, we literally never talk. So I was like, I hope he's okay with being talking to the Patriots with me because we never do anymore.
We really don't, but I'm happy to be on your show doing it and being a guest.
Thanks.
It is kind of it definitely role reverse, but I love it. I do love that.
I appreciate that you took the time out of your busy, popular schedule
I'm
to
sorry, I'm a
be
busy
here.
guy. We have a
Yeah.
fantasy draft tonight, so this is just gonna all help to me to draft the best team. By the way, number one overall pick, so
Oh,
it's kind of
geez.
obvious
I
who I'm
wonder who
taking
you're
there.
gonna take. I
I
can't.
know
I couldn't imagine.
the big
Um.
mystery. Definitely the
Yeah.
mystery.
I know, as it would be with for anybody. I still have yet to do a draft, but we can talk about that at a different time. So, I was trying to think about what we could talk about today, and I was like, okay, well, I haven't been talking on here since Monday, so let's talk about the news. I feel like basically the news of the week is the schedule, the roster and the practice squad. So I just want to go and break that down because I'm yet to talk about it. I don't know how much you've gotten a chance to talk about it, but um I just wanted to start off by doing that because I'm actually a little bit excited. I feel, I think you're a little bit more of an optimistic fan, kind of like I am. So,
Hmm.
I want to get your thoughts. So, just what was your overall reaction when you heard what the roster was going to be and who was cut? Like before we heard about who was joining the practice squad, was there anyone that you were upset about hearing get cut?
Yeah, I was really upset about Lil Jordan Humphreys. I mean, I went to training camp days 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, saw him
Mhm.
play, and I was like, who's number 83? 83 is incredible. And then you look it up on the roster, and it's Lil Jordan Humphreys, who the only
Mhm.
reason you know his name is because it sounds like a rapper from this day and
Yeah.
age now.
Do
But
you know
like
the
the man is
secret
not
behind his
Lil.
name? Do you know the
And I do
secret
not know
behind
the
his name?
secret. What is the secret?
From what I understand, when he was born, his mom let his older brother name him, and he was a big fan of Michael Jordan, so he named
Oh,
him Little
okay.
Jordan.
That's incredible. I mean,
I know.
that's definitely a great name to share with someone. Great story. So I'm in on
And
that.
it's like cool that you're like your sibling named you, like I mean it's better than him being like, let's name him like Spot, or something stupid like a
Yeah,
dog.
like
You know what I mean?
fart.
Like if you're gonna
Let's
give
name
your
him
kid,
Fart.
yeah, Fart. This is Fart Humphrey. Yeah, that would be so mean. Um, but anyway,
Kind of
continue. Go
close,
ahead.
but yeah. No, I just it was really shocking to me that he did not make the team because he was easily out of obviously the other three bigger names or four bigger names that were going to be the starters or on the team. I thought he had potential to make the roster and produce to some level. He's a
Mm-hmm.
big guy who'd be really good for to have Mac have a weapon who is tall, has some size to
Yeah.
him. And yeah, he may not be the fastest guy out there. I've said it on the Gillette Gazette podcast. But he has good game speed, and
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly what you want out of a player, let alone
Yeah.
just a skill position like that. And then the other shock to me was JJ Taylor in a way, just because I
Mm-hmm.
thought that they could use him on punt returns and whatnot, and that he could be a nice third down goal line back. You remind me of a lot like Kevin Falk, like he could be that
Mm-hmm.
type of role.
Yeah.
But I'm just happy they're on the practice squad, so they're still in the team, just not on the roster, we'll say.
Yeah, and I felt the same with Humphrey. I was actually really disappointed because I was telling people on here and then on Twitter that he was the guy that I was gonna sit on a hill and die on that hill for this year. So I was really upset. And then, transitioning that into the practice squad, we knew because of Thornton's injury and because of Montgomery's injury that there was a possibility they'd be placed on IR, which then, gave Humphrey like a chance to be brought back. So we were still waiting on that. And I was like, okay. So then once we heard what the practice squad was, it was almost like all the entire list of guys that they released um
Exactly.
were brought back. So I was pretty
Yeah.
happy with that. And so let's just jump straight into we'll just break every position down because I have it all
Let's do
list.
it.
So for quarterbacks, obviously very predictable, no cuts. I'm completely fine with it. I'm assuming you feel the same.
I'm interested in why they kept three. I know that it is a Belichickian thing to have three quarterbacks on the roster, but at this point in where the Patriots, team, dynasty, whatever you want to call it, is that you kind of need to sacrifice those, older traditional ways to add another
Mm-hmm.
guy like a Terrence Marshall, a JJ Taylor, or Cam McGrone back on the roster where yeah, they're in the practice squad and you call them up whenever you want, but you want them getting those first team reps as much as possible because that's what's going to really build your depth and make you into a good and better team than you were the season previous.
Yeah.
I just, yeah, that was just the big thing for me.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people aren't fond of Hoyer, but I think that his mentorship is important, and Mac has only said glowing things about him from his first year. So I feel like part of it, and I can't say that this is what Belichick's thinking was, but I wouldn't be surprised if because there's been so many changes with McDaniels leaving and then they bring in Joe Judge and Matt Patricia, it's like one stability factor for Mac would be having Hoyer there.
Oh,
So
for sure. Yeah.
and of course, I mean, through the preseason, Bailey Zappi got a lot of reps, but he can play pretty erratic. So,
Yeah. Oh, he
you
was,
know,
yeah.
I mean, he has a good arm. Obviously, if you look at his last season in college, he has an arm. He can play, but maybe it's that unpredictability factor that also played into it, where Belichick's like, okay, well, I got Hoyer. He's a reliable veteran who knows the system. Blah blah blah. I wouldn't be surprised if that played into it too. But what I
Mhm.
thought was interesting is a lot of players have been talking about Mac and his confidence this season, which I think is really important because so much scrutiny has come to the Patriots on the offense specifically and how they're going to be. And if the Patriots are somehow ruining Mac and his future and what he could be and the mistakes that offensive play caller, blah, blah, blah. And so hearing that Mac is still talking in a confident way about himself. I mean, he just said it again. I feel confident in what we're doing and that he feels like they've, quote, ironed a lot of things out. You hear that from him, which is great. But then even Jacoby Myers has talked about it saying, quote, his leadership has been crazy this year. He's always in the building. He knows what he wants. So we already got that feeling from him last year. How important do you think that is this year because of all of the changes?
I think it's even more important this year than it was last year because there's a lot more negativity surrounding the team, especially
Mhm.
with the just question mark at who's going to be calling plays, and that over, beating it like a dead horse type of
Yeah.
topic of, is it going to be Patricia, Joe Judge, Belichick? Like, to be honest with you, who cares? I don't
Yeah.
care. I just
Yeah.
want to see them win. I don't give two shits how it happens. I just
Yeah.
want it to happen. And with Mac being confident the way he is, that's all you can ask for if you're a fan from your quarterback, is him
Mm.
saying, yeah, we're confident. Like, what we're doing, it's going to happen. It may not happen now. It may not happen, by week 3, 4, 5, but it's going to happen this season. And I'm confident in Mac. I mean, he
Yeah.
was, the thing is that the Patriots, Mac's not the problem. And he's the second year guy, and that's a
Exactly. Yeah.
huge thing. That's a huge thing for a team.
Yeah. And that's what I've emphasized on here a lot is people want to try and pinpoint what the issue is. And I think it's kind of difficult because, as we've said a million times already, there's been so many changes on the team, specifically on the offense, that it's like there are problems that need to be addressed, but it doesn't seem like Mac is the issue. Like in this case, I would say obviously it looks more like the play calling, like I wanted to get into about Matt Patricia and Joe Judge. So part of what I think might be an issue is Matt Patricia, I feel like, has too much on his plate. So he was brought in and they kind of didn't give him a title. It was kind of like, okay, what is he going to be doing? They gave him some like BS thing, like he's the director of football operations or whatever it was at the beginning. And then it was like, okay, he's going to be the offensive line coach, but then he's also calling plays. And that is what he's been doing, both of which he's not done before. So
No,
it's a
no,
lot
it's
for him
not.
to be trying to balance. And the
Yeah.
biggest issues that we have seen, which we'll get into in a little bit, is the offensive line. So if the offensive line is not protecting Mac, if they're not opening up plays for running backs to, run through the gaps, like what are we doing here? So Mac is getting the fall, and I think it's just because he's the Patriots quarterback and that's just what happens. But there are bigger issues at hand, and I'm wondering if they're going to change that before the season. Are they going to take more off
My
of
bad.
Patricia? Like, what are we going to do? What do you think?
I think the big thing is, wait, repeat that again. Hold on. I lagged a bit.
Um, do you think that they're going to try and like maybe take some of the stuff off of Patricia's plate and maybe have him focus on maybe he'll just be
Oh,
the play caller or maybe just be the offensive line coach?
yeah.
Like, do you think
Yeah.
that's impacting the success of the offense?
No, I think what they're doing now in the preseason, having him try to do play calling. I don't.
Oh, you're muted. Whoop. Yep, you're still muted.
How about now?
There you go.
Okay. So I think the preseason, they're just gonna have him do everything and just be like,
Yeah.
"What did you do well in? What didn't you do well in?"
Yeah.
Where here, with here is you had to he's gonna now in the regular season, he may not have done well in the play calling. It may have, the struggles may have been Patricia's, not Joe
Yeah.
Judge's, but
Yeah.
so he'll probably be more focused on the offensive line, which he should. He should be
Yeah.
on the offensive line because
Mhm.
that's kind of the closest thing that he has to his past
What he's
with
done before.
defense. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And one thing I think that people have talked about too is Mac. It was said that Mac was going to get more opportunities to get involved in play calling and in the playbook, which I think that's true. But someone said, I can't remember which reporter it was, but he was talking about how in the preseason that Mac wasn't given the opportunity to change the play at the line, that whatever play he was told to run was what they had to do.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
do you think that that's going to change for the regular
Yes.
season?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna see more structure in the regular season for sure. It's just
Yeah.
at this point, it's preseason. So the thing that people forget about the preseason is that whatever happens really doesn't matter. Like even the Ravens going 23-0 doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. It doesn't.
Yeah.
So what they're doing is just kind of throwing spitballs at a wall and see whatever will stick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's where the regular season, the first 4 weeks come really to be a crucial part of the Patriots season, because that's kind of like a more serious preseason, we'll say. Like they're really just trying to iron out the kinks that are with the current 53 that they have. And that's including the
Yeah.
coaching staff too. And that's something that Joe Judge and Patricia struggled to be on their own. They struggled.
Yeah.
So now what they're going to do is Belichick's just going to treat them like students again, and they're going to go back to that success, or they're going to feel more comfortable in a new role in New England because that was where they had their most recent success than they would on any other team. So I feel like everything will pan out. It's just like, as they say in wrestling, like, let it play out.
Yeah.
Just let it play out.
Well, and I think the biggest issue is that the reactions are coming from people who have never been around for a rebuild or anything like this type of era for the Patriots, because for so
no one
long,
has.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't, you haven't, we're not at that age to remember what was going on in the 90s and the 80s and whatever, but I think trying to have that mindset of just like embracing what we're going through. It's like the fact that they had a rookie quarterback play as well as he did last year, go to the playoffs after missing it and went 10-7, set rookie, was the best rookie of the year. Like, that's way better than what a lot of teams who haven't even been able to sniff a Super Bowl would kill for. I just think, given, and of course in the media, it's all about clicks. It's all about interactions. It's all about having the hottest take. But anyway, sticking to offense, I want to get into the running back situation. So Kevin Harris and JJ Taylor were cut and they were brought back to the practice squad, which we talked about that you are happy at least with JJ Taylor. There's no word, as far as I have heard, on the severity of Montgomery's injury, but I'm assuming that he hasn't been put on IR yet, so that might be a good sign. And I think he's important. I think he's going to be a huge part of the offense this year when he's healthy. Do you agree?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Ty Montgomery is going to be what Cordell Patterson should have been for New England and what he was in Atlanta last year. Because Ty Montgomery is one of those gadget players that he can really play anywhere at this point in his career. And especially with how weird this offense is going to be. It's not going to be, the usual offense we're used to. It's going to be a lot of, random guys getting passes. Whoever's open is going to be open. Devontae Parker might not be the guy that he targets every game. Maybe, that type of vibe. So to me, Montgomery more flows into that. And that's where he's going to have success. Whereas Damon Harris is going to have a good season. But the thing is, Ramondre Stevenson has been already said, they've said out of camp now that he could get like a majority of the carries already, which if you're a Patriots fan, you want to hear all of that news.
I know. I was going to ask you your opinion on that. So obviously, for people who don't know, and I say obviously as if it should be well known, but if you don't know, Harris is playing on the last year of his rookie contract. So the way that this has gone traditionally under Belichick is he's probably not going to retain Harris unless Harris takes, I guess, a significant smaller contract than what another team might give him. But given that he has Ramondre Stevenson waiting in the wings, only going into his second year, it's possible that Harris does walk after the season. Do you think that we're going to see less of Harris on the field this year because of that? Like, do you think Harris is going to still remain as the RB1, or do you think Stevenson's stepping in that role?
I think it's going to be a lot of what we've seen so far with other teams. Like, I don't like to bring up the Cleveland Browns, but look what they're doing with
Chubb
Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. Like, they kind of set the blueprint there for how to have a dual back system. And it's worked out pretty well. The only difference is that, Ramondre and Harris don't specialize in that pass catcher role like Kareem Hunt does. So,
but
my big thing is
Stevenson has worked on it and has looked better.
He absolutely.
So there is that huge aspect. Yeah, because Harris obviously is not that guy. And they're built different. They're different. Yeah. Stevenson is more of the, there's a reason why he was compared to LeGarrette Blount right away, because he's built like him, he plays like him, and he can take on that role. But it is going to be interesting to see who steps up in the pass catching spot now that they don't have Brandon Bolden and they don't have James White.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Brandon Bolden, they can leave. He's fine.
I'm just saying he was another kind of like old reliable type of dude. They the team for so long. It was like, okay, well, if it wasn't James White, it was Bolden. So, and he played
Mm.
pretty well last year. I know that people didn't love him and were ready because, he was the joke of like, oh, uh, McDaniels was calling like another some sort of slant play or whatever to Bolden. It was a joke, but he played pretty well last year, especially with James White being gone.
Mm.
And like I said, I wanted to talk a little bit about my new favorite that has joined the
Let it
Patriots.
go.
So, yeah, I had to say I love Lynn Bowden Jr.
Why though? Yeah, explain, because I know you
Okay,
wrote about it, but
yes.
I want to hear it.
So first of all, I love that they brought in a former Dolphin before their game against the Dolphins, because that just got the Dolphins fans so riled up. They were so angry, saying that they're just going to put him in an interrogation room and they're just going to try and get all of the plays out of him. Like, boy, he sat all of 2021. He was on injured reserve. This guy does not know like what is
Yeah.
happening with the Miami Dolphins. But I think we don't. So since we don't know what's going on with Montgomery, I mean, it appears he's not going to be being put on IR, but we'll see. Maybe he'll miss a game or two. Bowden is another player like who can do anything. Basically, he can be a receiver, he can be a running back. He even played quarterback in college because the first and second starters got injured. He was playing quarterback. He does wildcat plays. He was
Jeez.
throwing the ball. It's insane.
I like this guy. I like
And
him.
so if you want to read my article, it is with on Musket Fire. I post those on my Twitter. But let's say 2019 stats, just so that we can familiarize you
All
with
right.
him. He played in 13 games. He had 30 receptions for 8 yards and a touchdown. He had a 185 carries for 1,468 yards and 13 touchdowns. He completed 35 of 74 passes for 403 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. He also is a returner. He had 9 kick returns for 220 yards and 4 punt returns for 53 yards. So this is what I'm talking about. Like, he was a favorite in the 2020 draft to go to the Patriots, because if you built a dude
That's a
to go,
Patriot.
that's a
Through and through.
Belichick.
That is a
That's like,
Belichick player
yeah,
through and through.
that is a
Oh,
Frankenstein
man.
player that Belichick built in his laboratory under Foxboro Stadium.
Yeah.
And like this
Oh,
guy,
absolutely.
so I mean, it sucks for him that he was drafted by the Raiders. He was traded to the Dolphins, and then he had a pretty decent season in 2020, sat 2021. But I think he's in the right place. Like, he can do everything. So
Oh, Sarah's gone. So while Sarah's gone,
I
okay.
I don't know what just happened.
I was literally about to just like go on a rant, just be like, yes, Lynn Bowden, but no.
Thank God I have someone who also hosts things, so like that you don't just sit there and like
Oh, I was ready to carry on. I was ready to carry that torch, which I
So
will do
I
now. So I
appreciate
like
that.
Lynn Bowden. I think that's just
Yes.
someone that you need to have in the Patriot system. I
Yes.
mean, it sounds a lot like Edelman. I think
Mhm.
it's like a type of player he is, where if you ask him to do something, he's going to do it, and he's going to do it pretty well
Yeah.
for, a lot better than you expected. And I mean, we need speed. We need guys like that in the team this year, because we need football players. This team needs football players.
Yeah, and they don't seem to have an official returner. There's a lot of guys who can, and they tested a lot of guys throughout preseason, but they didn't seem to love any of them. I mean, Belichick even said like they didn't really get anything done. I think it was against the Raiders is when he said it. It was like they didn't really do anything in their returns. So, and then of course, you don't want like your corners doing returns. You don't want Duggar doing returns, because
No, because
those
then they
guys
can get
are,
hurt.
yeah, it's like they're too valuable on defense that you don't want that happening. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does do that. But anyway, if for all of you guys who don't know about him, just look him up, read my article, look up
Read
his
it.
highlights. I even retweeted them. I think he's going to be great. Could be a great filler, specifically if Montgomery's out, because I was, we talked about it already, but I was looking forward to Montgomery. And I think that that's what we're kind of moving towards. I'm going to get into that when we break it down to defense, but it seems like they're getting more into the positionless position players. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And he's screams that. So, also I want to talk about Thornton to IR, missing 4 games at least.
Not bad.
I think it's going to be more than that. He broke his collarbone.
Really?
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
I mentioned it when I don't know if it was earlier this week, but don't you remember the year that Tony Romo broke his collarbone?
Oh yeah,
He
yeah.
was out and then he came back and in the first game back broke his other collarbone.
Oh yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And he
actually
got
do. I actually, yeah, now
yeah,
vividly remember that. Yeah.
and had steel plates put in his
Mhm.
clavicle. Yeah. So as with how Thornton is built, because he's so tall and thin, I would rather him stay out if he needs it because I don't want to risk further injury. But
Oh, yeah.
because of him being to IR, who do you think that opens the door for? Do you think it's going to be another wide receiver like Trey Nixon, Humphrey, Bowden to be brought up, or do you think it's going to be someone else like an offensive line player or maybe even defense?
No, I think it would be LeJordan Humphrey if anything.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get that just because they probably plan for this and they're probably thinking that, they're thinking best case scenario. Then, they're like, oh, he'll probably miss a couple games.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't happen. And then like week 5, 6, all of a sudden LeJordan Humphrey or Trey Nixon gets called up.
Mm-hmm.
And all that does is just like it saves their ass. You know what I mean? It saves them, where that's probably why they were signed so quick to the practice squad.
Mm-hmm.
It was because of stuff like, situations like that. And to me, it's the wide receiver core is so deep. It's such a deep position group that, you can kind of do stuff like this and then, have your cake and eat it too with the practice squad in case some guy doesn't make it. And put it this way, Christian Wilkerson is still injured too.
Yes,
and
I know.
I mean, that's someone who would definitely make the squad.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious to see because Humphrey didn't get a ton of reps in preseason or practice with Mac Jones. I mean, he did a little bit, but not a ton. And Trey Nixon was specifically like second team. So I am curious to see how that goes throughout the next week and a half. If they click with Mac as well, because it's great if they have that chemistry with Bailey Zappi, but like obviously Bailey's Zappi is not going to be playing week 1.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I do think that, but like you said, I feel pretty good about who they have at receiver. I know they're not, the big names in the league, but I think that they're set up better than they were last year. And if people are upset about who they have, don't forget they have like 53 million or a little less to spend next season. Off season.
Mm-hmm.
And not a ton of guys that I feel like are big pieces to the team are going to free agency. I would have to double check. Some of the older guys, obviously like McCourty and Slater, which are huge losses, but I'm saying it's not like bigger pieces are going to free agency. So that's kind of exciting too, because then at least the money that's freeing up is not like, oh yeah, because your entire team is leaving,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So for tight ends, Jonnu Smith comeback season. So they restructured his contract this morning. I don't know if you saw that. So they converted over almost $8 million of his contract into a base salary into a bonus. So that cleared over $5 million in cap space. Do you feel he'll be able to play better? They're saying that this offense is built more towards like how he plays, and it's going to be more incorporating of him and Henry being on the field at the same time. So do you think he's going to have that comeback season? We'll see what we saw in the 2020 season.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
I think the Jonnu Smith got the short end of the stick last year, just like Aguilar. It was just a tough year where, they're talented and they didn't play bad. Like, I don't think they played horribly. The problem was they didn't play up to the expectations. And that's the biggest thing when you look at Jonnu Smith what is his expectation? The man can do it all. He can run the ball. They did a lot of, tight end sweeps and, tight end screens with him that would be very good and very, interesting if they use those type of plays and formations in the red zone, kind of like the Chiefs with Travis Kelce.
Yeah.
I think Smith's a lot more athletic than Travis Kelce. So, do some tight end sweeps on the goal line, 5-yard line. That really throws the offense up. The defense through a loop, and it just
Yeah.
improves your offense as a whole.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think that you bring in the 2 top tight ends that were available in free agency to not use one.
Oh, agreed.
And, they signed Smith first. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I know that people were like,
Yeah.
"Oh, well," like I kept seeing people say because they signed Hunter Henry, that means that they really didn't want to sign Smith. And I'm like, I don't believe that whatsoever.
No.
But yeah, I don't think that you signed Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry to just have one of them succeed and the other not to. It doesn't make any
Exactly.
sense to me.
No.
So yeah, I think that he has it in him to be better. It's just we haven't seen exactly what this new offense is. If they do start doing more double tight end sets, then yeah, I think that it is going to be better. We know what Henry can do, but that's a part that's hard too. There's so many people coming out and predicting what they think this season is going to be, but we haven't even seen what they're going to be doing this year. Like
Yeah.
preseason is not it's an indicator of how the team is, but it's not a real indicator of how the season's going to go because they're not going to show you everything in preseason. Why would they? A team would be foolish to do that.
Exactly.
So, everyone freaking out because there's been I think Tom Curran said that he believes they're going to go like 8-9 this year. Yeah, so I'm just seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing a lot of people think that they're just going to be completely terrible. So
let it play out, Tom. Let it play out, as my good friend says.
So they do have a couple tight ends on the practice squad. Sokol and didn't they put someone else? Wasn't there somebody else?
Oh, Heidenmeyer or something?
Or yeah, something like that. So Asi was going to join the practice squad. He was actually in Foxboro ready to join them when they found out that he was claimed by the Bengals. So another unfortunate situation like we talked about last week when Dalton Keene was released, but I mean they're in good hands right now with Jonnu Smith as long as they has a better season and Hunter Henry, so I'm not too concerned about it. What I am concerned about, and we've touched on it briefly, was the offensive line.
They gotta be better.
Are they gonna be better? Yes.
Yeah, they will.
They do have a couple rookies. They have Chasen Hines and Cole Strange. They made the roster. A lot of people have talked about Isaiah Wynn. Do you think they're going to trade Wynn? I personally don't think so.
No, there's no reason to because you already traded away Jack Mason to the Bucs, and then you get Cole Strange. It seems like you want to go younger, and you can't just trade all the pieces to the farm off the bat, and you need someone there, and he's the vet, and a lot of expectations coming out of the draft. So I don't think they're going to trade him just yet, and they shouldn't. He needs to up his shit, for sure.
Well, and one thing that I don't think people realize is I think they only have 7 or 8 offensive linemen on the team, which is pretty light for what they usually carry on their roster. Mm-hmm. They're not very deep. This is another year with offensive line is not a deep area whatsoever on the team. No, so for them to get rid of Wynn just seems silly to me. Not to mention a lot of people aren't going to want to pay him $10 million. No. So, I mean, the only thing that would make sense would be trading him, but also receiving the same type of dude back. Because if you're going to get rid of him, you're going to need to replace him. Mm-hmm. So if you get a draft pick back, that's great. But what are you going to do with that right now when it's one of the biggest issues that you have?
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't make any sense to me. And I don't know who is out there that would even be worthy of trading him for.
No, I don't really see any reason to trade him.
So you do think that they'll clean it up before the season starts? Or
I think they will. They'll figure it out. I mean, they're just kind of getting their feet wet, and it's a different – that's the thing with the offensive line is that it's a unit, as they used to say when I played sports, you're only as good as your weakest link. And could not be more true for the offensive line. The only way you get better as a unit is if you play together and play in snaps, next to each other and doing drills and stuff like that. So there's just not been a lot of reps between these starters. Once that gets underway, I think it'll be pretty good.
And they have a big test week 1 down in Miami. So
big test week 1.
And we're not I don't know. I understand the pessimism for the season. I completely understand it. But as I say, I can't get myself to be in that mindset already when it's just going to drive me crazy and I'm just going to be completely miserable. Like if I get
Oh
down
yeah,
in the trenches with you and think that this season is going to be completely horrible, then I'm going to hate my life every single day because like football
yeah.
consumes me so much that
Oh, hello, yeah.
yeah, well,
I
yeah.
feel you. I feel you, girl.
So on the opposite side, the D line, how are you feeling about the D line? I obviously feels a lot better than the offensive line, but I also think that they have the potential to be a lot better this year. Specifically with Sam Roberts. Now, he's my favorite, but do you have a specific favorite? Do you like Sam Roberts?
I like Sam Roberts. Barrymore really impressed me.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Jennings.
Yes.
I love Anthony Jennings
Yes.
this
Yeah.
year. So those guys when I watched them pre week one, I was very excited to see them play well and
Mm.
say, okay, they're finally, we're getting something there because the defense was the biggest question mark last year, obviously, and
And what's
it's got to be an upgrade.
And what's funny is I think a lot of people thought that they were going to be the biggest question this year. People thought that the offense was going to be the better side of the football and the defense was going to be the more questionable part. And I think that it's kind of flipped
Oh,
where
absolutely.
the defense is a little questionable in the sense of there's so many new guys, there's a lot of younger guys. So you never know what you're going to get out of them. But the offense, I think, if you're concerned at all, it's definitely the offense.
Mm-hmm.
But Sam Roberts for me, that's one of my guys. Like if I have to
Yeah.
pick a defensive guy, first of
Okay.
all, he grew up
I'm
a Patriot.
Barrymore, but yeah.
He grew up a Patriots fan,
Oh,
family of
okay.
Patriots fans. Yeah, did you see his photo that he or
No,
okay. So when he was drafted, he had posted a video of him and his family all in like Patriots jerseys and stuff,
oh,
like
that's
dancing and
awesome.
celebrating. And then there's also a photo on his Twitter from when the Patriots are playing the Chiefs in the AFC Championship, and he took like a selfie and he's in a Patriots jersey. And I'm like,
That's
I am so
incredible.
here for this. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so glad that he made the team and not the practice squad because it feels more like it means more.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
and it's always one of those cool stories. I don't know. Like imagine growing up a Patriots fan and you end up playing for the Patriots. Like that has to be the
The
coolest feeling
dream.
ever.
That is the dream.
So, I'm mostly excited because I think that um before we get to the linebackers, it looks like the guys that they have on the team are going to get to the quarterback a lot more, and that is the biggest issue that they saw, especially at the end of the season last year. Let's not talk about the Bills playoff game. Let's not
Nope.
talk about it.
Nope.
So Sam Roberts, if you don't know, he's 6'5", 295. He is a giant of a man, which I love. He's an explosive player. He's a physical player. He brings the pressure. He's quick. He got to the quarterback into the backfield a lot in preseason. I understand they're not playing against starters. It wasn't a real game, but that was exciting because for like the entirety of last year, we kept talking about Juwon, but there was nobody else that was really even producing anywhere near what Juwon was doing. Yes, this is a different position, but like there needs to be somebody who can slow these quarterbacks down because the game is changing. We're seeing all these mobile quarterbacks, and you can't be having Josh Allen literally stand there for
No,
5
you can't.
seconds and then
You
run into
can't.
the end zone. Like you can't do that. And I think Sam Roberts is going to be a huge part in um making that better.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
And so let's get to the linebackers really quickly before
Mhm.
Pat does have to leave us.
I do
So
have to
I will
leave.
finish the show.
Yeah, I will talk about my linebackers before I,
Yes.
I head out because that is my number one issue with this team is the linebackers.
Okay.
Judon, I know he's the linebacker, edge rush, tomato, potato.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm excited for him this year. From what I saw in the final preseason game, he did look probably the best out of the defense. I'm interested to see how Cam McGrone does on the practice squad. And you know who I'm very excited for?
Who?
It was team captain on the defensive side, locker room leader, Juwon Bentley.
I
Finally. Juwon
Yeah.
Bentley getting his due. He's been praised by all the coaches and doing well. And
Mm-hmm.
we need a linebacker like that, so I'm happy he's taking that role.
Yeah, and I've liked what we've seen so far with Judon and Uche and Jennings specifically. Like
Mm-hmm.
if they can be like that trio, then I'm excited because if we need to take a lot of that pressure off of Judon. Judon fell off a lot last year because he was
Yeah.
on the field for like 80 something percent of all
And they're
defensive
holding
snaps.
him, and like he
Yeah,
couldn't
oh
get
my
over
god.
that hump of it. And
I
yeah,
know.
I'm with you.
That was ridiculous. So I am excited. It's definitely the defense is the youth movement. We're seeing younger, faster, just more explosive players. So I'm excited. Mac Wilson, I was so happy that he made the
Yeah,
team.
I'm excited to see Mac Wilson too. There's a lot of chatter around him. I don't
Mm-hmm.
really know much about him personally, but from what I saw when I went to the Giants game and in training camp, obviously, like he looked pretty well. I'm excited to see him in the regular season.
Yeah.
Hopefully, he does do something well.
I know I was saying that I was hopeful that he would make the team overall, but especially because his son took his first steps at Gillette Stadium. I'm like, can you
Oh, you
imagine
have
trying to
to.
tell your kid that story and then you're like, but I was cut.
Yeah,
Like
but I got
that would
cut.
suck. So
That would suck.
um anyway, I will let you go.
Oh, it
I
was
am
great to have me on again when I actually like can spend like an hour,
yes.
whatever. Because I do love talking on here. I really appreciate you having me on your show. That's the thing. It's
Yes.
your show. I like being a guest. I don't just like being the host with the most. I do like being a guest and just hanging out, talking shop, and that's my favorite thing to do.
Well, thank you. I will text you and good luck on your fantasy draft. Let me know how it
Thank you.
goes. Let me see your team when you're
Oh,
done.
I will absolutely send it to you immediately.
Okay.
So yeah.
All
All
right.
right.
Well, I'll
Thank
talk
you
to you later.
guys.
Bye. All right, guys, you're stuck with me now. So let's see if I have anything else that I want to talk about with the linebackers. Oh, I did want to talk about this really briefly. Jelani Tavai, which I believe Buddy has spoken about him quite a bit. Was it Buddy? I think it was. Yes, yes. That he believes that Patricia wants to keep him on the team for the sole purpose of proving to the Lions and to himself and others that he is good. But I do question um how involved he will be because even during the preseason he wasn't great. And you don't if you're going to be going with the youth movement and trying to make a younger overall team and a faster team and making little mistakes, then I think having a player like Tavai who at this point has looked like a liability is just a little worrisome. We'll have to see what the rest of practices go, especially before the first game. I don't anticipate that the first game is going to be amazing anyway, because it is against the Dolphins in Miami, which is always a problem for them. But I do think that the linebackers are an exciting part of the defense to watch, if not one of the more exciting parts of the team in general to watch. So I want to talk about the cornerbacks. It's basically Jalen Mills and the Joneses. I can't believe that they have 3 Joneses just in the secondary, and that's not obviously not including Mac Jones. So Terrence Mitchell was cut. He was brought back to the practice squad, and I know people were a little bit surprised, but I think he kind of just ended up being the odd man out. The corners were another part of the team that had a lot of competition and was a lot deeper than I think people anticipated. After JC Jackson left and um Gilmore was traded, I think that the cornerbacks were one of the positions that I was most concerned about coming into this season, especially with JC Jackson leaving. I didn't know where they were going to go, and a lot of people weren't thrilled with how Jalen Mills performed last year, which I think a lot of that was people not really paying too much attention, because for this basically the second half of the season he did really well. And I think that had a lot to do with getting more comfortable in playing corner again, because he was out in 2021, he was playing safety. So I think that had a lot to do with it. It's another position that they are going completely with youth. They have Marcus Jones, Jack Jones. So they're definitely liking what they've seen from the 2 rookies so far. They both made the team. They're not even on the practice squad. I think that they're going to be a lot better than people think. I like Jonathan Jones and what he's been doing and moving him to the outside. I think Jalen Mills has for the most part, I know they won't award it to him like by name, but I do think that he's solidified himself as the cornerback CB1, and I don't have a problem with that. I think, like I said, people just need to kind of look at how he performed at the last half of the season and realize that what he played like at the beginning of the year is not, it doesn't match at all at the end, and that's what's important, because you see the growth and you see the transformation, you see the development into a better player. And now that he's entering his second season with the team, has the one season under his belt, he has the understanding of the coaches and how they play and what's expected of him. We've seen through the years how much of a difference that makes with the Patriots. So I think that it's gonna be okay. I'm excited about Mills and the Joneses show. I'm also excited about safety. This is one that I specifically wanted to talk about, was the position of positionless players. It seems like the safeties for sure are kind of transferring more into defensive backs. They're not really just playing safety. The guys that they have there are guys that can play almost anywhere in the secondary. So I do think that Joshua Bledsoe making a team is a huge deal. Jabril Peppers, we didn't get to see a whole lot from him in the preseason, and that was due to recovering from injury, but he's a guy who can play anything, one of those hybrid players. There a lot of versatility, and I think that that was what we're going to see a lot of. We already talked about that with Bowden Jr. and Ty Montgomery on the offense, and it seems like they're going in that direction more, which is something that we know Belichick loves. And I think that's going to become even more important with a young team, because then you have that versatility and the comfort level of, if this guy maybe isn't doing so great at this position, well, maybe if you move him to this other one that he knows and can, and maybe he doesn't have as much experience playing over here, maybe he'll thrive more over here, and then you can move this guy here. So I think that that's going to be a key thing this season, just overall. I think that they've emphasized it a lot, even when talking to the media. And I'm all for it. I think that it's something that maybe more teams should do. The team, players become more valuable that way when you can move them around and use them to your advantage. And it kind of depends on the game and the opponent. So that's something that I feel like I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen more of from Belichick. And maybe we're getting into that era where we are now. And I want to talk about special teams. Lastly, I was really surprised about the cutting of Justin Bethel. A little bit more prepared for it than I think some other people, because Buddy had talked about it with his roster projection, that he felt Bethel would be a guy that would be cut. And even though I had already heard him talking about it, I was still a bit surprised, because he is still such an important player on the special teams. And a lot of the stuff that happened, especially last year, on special teams plays, was not something that had anything to do with Bethel. A lot of the best plays that happened during special teams was when Justin Bethel was on the field. So I do think that they'll miss him. I'm hopeful that they did keep Brendan Schooler, who is I think he was undrafted, or maybe he was a late draft pick. You guys can correct me in the comments. I don't remember off the top of my head. It appears he is going to be replacing Bethel at his position. I do think that they might miss Bethel, but they obviously liked what they saw in Schooler, and I know he made quite an impact in practices and preseason. So another position they were trying to get youthful at. Slater at some point, he's playing this year, but because he's contemplated retirement for the last 2 seasons, then it's possible that he doesn't come back next year. So I guess replacing Bethel now makes sense. And if you didn't know, Bethel did sign with Miami. So I don't think he was claimed. No, he signed with Miami. So we will be meeting him in 9 days. So that is all of the roster breakdown. I wanted to go a little bit into predicting the Patriots season. I am not the best at this, but I kind of wanted to just go over it and see how we feel, what we're feeling at this point. Not necessarily doing a season or a record prediction, because I'm horrible at that. And I don't want to put any negative vibes out there because I am superstitious, and so I do not want to do that. But they are playing in Miami next week, and they will be flying to Miami. I want to say Monday. I don't know if they specifically said what day, but I know they will be flying down and staying there a lot earlier than usual. I think it's a good idea. I think a lot of it has to do with acclimating to the weather, especially this early in the season. I live in Arizona, and before I went on air, I was telling Pat it was just 112 here on Wednesday. It's at 106 right now. So it's still hot here, even if it is September, and it's the same type of thing that happens in Florida. So that's a huge difference between Foxboro and Miami. And I think that that is a thing that ends up biting them in the butt, that when they're playing the game, because it is such a different atmosphere to play in and it affects your body differently. So I'm all for them going down there early and practicing and getting, like I said, acclimated to that, because it seems to be such an important factor in the outcomes of their game. I do find it funny that it bothered Dolphins fans so much hearing about it, and they believe that the reason why the Patriots are doing it is because they're scared of the Dolphins, and I just think that's ridiculous. I think it's not a bad move. I think any team would do that if they were in the same position. So, I mean, I think the same thing is going to happen when they have their trip to Arizona to play the Cardinals, and then they play the Raiders. I'm sure they're not going to go home in between then. So I don't know that it necessarily has to do anything with the feeling of competition, but it is what it is. So they do play Miami week 1, which, I mean, I guess it's great that they're getting that historically difficult game out of the way, but it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, couldn't it have been like week 4? This new schedule thing where they're kind of doing the division opponents to start the season and then the division opponents to end the season. I don't know how I feel about it. I think that it just can set them up for failure depending on how the season's going. Obviously, it's the playing at Miami is hard to start week 1 with. Then they go to week 2 at Pittsburgh, and I think that could be a winnable game for them because they're also in like a transitional period there. They don't really know exactly what direction they're going in for quarterback. They just lost Juju Smith-Schuster, and they're still kind of trying to figure themselves out. So I think that's a team that they could definitely beat. Miami, I'm just not sure if I'm going to go with history that I'm going to say they're not going to win in Miami. Week 3, they finally play at home against the Ravens. That one I don't feel too confident in, but the Ravens are a team that they always battle with, and it's always a good game. And a lot of in recent years, it's come down to the fourth quarter. It wasn't really one team blowing out the other. It's come down to a couple plays here and there, and that's how the game was decided. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens again. The Ravens are a familiar team, but I don't believe that Mac Jones has played the Ravens yet. So that's going to be a big challenge. And of course, rounding out the first month of difficult games, they're playing at Green Bay. Now, I think a lot of people will be worried because it's Green Bay at Green Bay. It's Aaron Rodgers and whatever, but they're going through some weirdness right now. Also, because they lost Devontae Adams, which was a huge part of their offense. They do have Aaron Jones, who obviously is a huge running back, especially if you're a fantasy owner, a fantasy player. You know that Aaron Jones can help you win games, but the type of X factor player that they lost in Devontae Adams, they don't currently have. There's a lot of question marks at receivers, and we know how Aaron Rodgers does when he doesn't have who he wants on his team. So if he is going to be unhappy that he doesn't have a number 1 guy, or he's not thrilled with the receivers that he does have, I don't know how their season's going to go. So I don't know that that's a game that I can say they're going to win or they're going to lose. I think you have to see how Green Bay plays for the first month or first 3 weeks before determining that. I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is the solo factor in determining what that the Patriots lose. I think that's just kind of jumping the gun, but that's just me. So week 5 they play at home versus Detroit. A lot of people assume that they're going to win that game, but I think Detroit could be kind of a sleeper team. They obviously have Jared Goff, who is not known for being an amazing quarterback, but they have added some good pieces on offense. So, I mean, they could be surprising. I don't know. Um, I like the idea of thinking that they could win that game, especially it being a home game, but they actually played worse at home last year. Hopefully that changes. I hope that home field advantage will actually be a thing for the Patriots this season. That would be very, very nice. So they play week 6 at Cleveland. I just want to say that they're going to beat Cleveland. I'm very excited that they do not have to play their starting quarterback and that they will likely be playing Jacoby Brissett. I love Jacoby, but the Browns are the Browns. I don't know that they have anything that really makes me nervous about the Patriots playing them. I would say they could probably win that game. Week 7 is versus Chicago, another team that's like in that transformation process, going for sure with Justin Fields, a new head coach. There's a lot of changes there. It will be interesting to watch, that's for sure. There's going to be a lot of talk about the Patriots taking Justin Fields over Mac Jones, especially if Mac is not doing too well at that point. People were thinking that Justin was going to possibly be the guy that the Patriots were going to go for or trade up for, and that's not what happened. So expect a lot of that this year. If the Patriots don't do too well, or Mac Jones specifically does not do too well by week 7. Week 8 at the Jets. I'm just going to say we're going to beat the Jets. They did have a good draft, but it's the Jets. Week 9 versus Indy. The Colts are going to be a lot different of a team this year. And I think, I don't want to give too much credit to just the quarterback, but I think in this case, it's a huge difference maker. Carson Wentz is not Matt Ryan, and Matt Ryan hasn't been great, but he's not a bad quarterback. So I think a lot of his struggles in recent years in Atlanta was the pieces around him and maybe the coaching. So I think this might be a better situation for him. And I think that it might be back to being a more difficult team for the Patriots to play. So that I'm excited to see that game. Glad that it is at Foxboro. Week 10 is a bye. Week 11 is against the Jets once again. And then week 12, they play, I believe it's Thanksgiving, against the Vikings at Minnesota. That is going to be a big game for the defense, I'm going to say. They have Justin Jefferson, who's an incredible player. They have what's their running back's name? Why can't I think of it? I'm going to Vikings running back. What is his name? I can't think of it off the top. Dalvin Cook. How could I not think of that? I'm not in mid-season mode yet. So got to get that in there. So it's going to be a difficult task, especially stopping the run. And that's not been a part that's been good for the Patriots defense. They've just allowed people to run all over them. So they'll have to get that in check by this game for sure, because Dalvin Cook is a machine. And Justin Jefferson is a scary player. He's just so good. So that's going to be a strong test for them. Then they move on to playing Buffalo at home in week 13. That's the first time that they're meeting, which is pretty crazy. Hopefully by that point, I don't care about the Bills, but hopefully the Patriots are established. They've figured out their identity. They have a well put together team and look like a more comfortable overall team at that point, that they can compete with Buffalo. I know a lot of people are just assuming that the Patriots have absolutely no chance against Buffalo this year, and I just think that's jumping too quickly. The Bills definitely have a team that's all in and ready to win everything this season, but history is not on their side. They did worse last year than they did the year before. They only beat the Patriots by 1 game last season. So I don't know that it's an automatic win for Buffalo. I think it on paper it looks like it, but we'll have to see. Week 14 is at Arizona. I should be at that game. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I think that's going to be a good game too. I believe DeAndre Hopkins will be back by then. But we know that towards the end of the season is when the Cardinals kind of start to fall off. At least the last few seasons, they've started off great, and at the end, they don't do so well. So we will have to see where they're at that point. It's another test of a mobile quarterback. Kyler is a fast and slippery quarterback. So I would like to believe that by this time, our defensive line and linebackers are getting to the quarterback and stopping that from happening. Week 15 is at Raiders, which I think that's probably going to be the game of the year. That's what everyone's looking forward to. Josh McDaniels versus Bill Belichick. It's going to be a lot of interesting storylines there. A lot more difficult than I think it would have been had they not traded for Devontae Adams. But Devontae Adams and Derek Carr have that history with them from playing together in college. And of course, Adams is just a freak of an athlete. He's just so good. There's basically no stopping him. They also have Renfro, they have Darren Waller, they have Josh Jacobs. So it's a stacked team over there in Vegas. Another big test for the Patriots. Week 16 is against the reigning AFC champions in Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, the end of the year is not going to be easy for the Patriots. It's Cincy, Miami, and then at Buffalo. I mean, those are going to be huge tests for them. And definitely if they make the playoffs, I mean, that's one way to head into the playoffs, having those three teams to play one after another. I'm trying not to have expectations or set them too high. I'm not doing the win-loss types of things. I'm just going to take it week by week, the way that the Patriots are known for doing, and the thing that they are known for preaching. So that's how I'm going to go into the season. That's what's going to keep me sane. And I encourage the rest of you to do the same, because embrace the period that the Patriots are in right now. Embrace this rebuild and figuring all of these things out. It'll be a lot more fun if you think of it in that way, than staying in that Tom Brady led Patriots era mindset, because that was those were the years where every game felt like it was a win. So just try to think more like me, guys. Hopefully I can rub off on you and you can pick up on my energy and then on my thought process, and we can all just be here and think the same way. I think it'll be a lot more enjoyable of a year. So that's all I have planned for today. I should be back on Monday, possibly. We'll see. I don't have all of my stuff figured out yet, but I do appreciate all of you guys tuning in with me today. And don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel and E2G Sports channel. Follow us on Twitter, me at SmarshXO and at E2G Sports. Leave a comment. Anything you want to talk about on next week's show, let me know. And I will talk to you guys later. Don't forget, go Pats. Bye.